Let's welcome a great guest today, David Stanfield, and he is an author of a book called Hellven, and he's going to explain about that book and what it means. And I've been reading it, and it's a great book, and it's encouraging. Really opens your eyes, and and it really has great scriptures to guide you. It's just a day-to-day food of the spirit. David, welcome to the show today, and God bless you what you have done with this book. I know it's helping a lot of people. I've already spread the word, my friend, with your book, and people are enjoying it.
I sure appreciate it, and I appreciate you having me today.
Absolutely. So, can you tell us how you came about this idea and what this Hellven means to people, so that they understand exactly what you mean by that, and how did the Lord lead you to this?
Right. I'll kind of give a rundown of how I came up with the book idea and got started with that. But I kind of explained it at the beginning of the book. I never have been a book guy or book lover. I'm always active, so I don't sit a lot. And so one night I was sleeping, and a lot of the times when I'm dreaming or laying in bed at night, I feel like the Lord talks to me a lot, gives me ideas and different things. And one night he came to me and said, "I want you to write this book." And I mean, it was very real. Like, he was standing beside my bed telling me the name of the book, what he wanted to, the chapters to be, why he wanted me to do it. And it was so real. I got up and got a piece of paper and a pen and just started writing things down that I was hearing the Holy Spirit tell me. And I even sketched out a picture of the front of the book, which is basically what the cover is today. But I got up the next morning and I was thinking, did I dream that or what? And I looked over on my nightstand, and there all of my notes were. So
Wow.
I immediately went into talking to God and saying, why would you want me to write a book? I'm definitely not a book guy, and barely ever read, and sure don't like writing, and just struggled with it. I struggled for a long time with whether or not I was even qualified to write a book. And so I basically just kind of blew it off. I mean, it was very real and kind of scary because it was so real, but I just let it go and started getting convicted over time. I barely even told anyone about it. I think I told my wife, and my father was a preacher, and I told him a little bit about it. And he would tell me stuff like, well, if that was that real, that you felt like the Lord told you to do that and you're not doing it, you're gonna face some things if you're not obedient with it. So like I said, I just let a lot of time go by and didn't do anything. And then I had a good friend of mine that we were driving together one day, and I told him about it, and he looked at me and said, David, if the Lord wanted a goat to write a book, he could make a goat write a book. So the fact that he's asked you to do it is significant, and you need to be obedient with that. And that got my attention too, but I still didn't start writing the book. And I think actually like 2 or 3 years passed from the time I was prompted to the time I actually started doing it. And I, go into a little more detail in the book about that. But when I finally did start writing, I still really struggled with just, being qualified and wondering if what I was doing was gibberish or what. And I was sitting in church one Sunday, and we had a guest speaker, and he was actually talking about being obedient and feeling unqualified for things. And it's like, he said, and it stuck with me. He said, just the act of obedience qualifies you for things that you don't necessarily feel qualified for. And that one really stuck with me, and I got after it after that.
God calls the unqualified. That's for sure. I mean, you look what he did with Moses. Moses, he could barely talk, right? And he made, and look what he did. Yeah, that definitely doesn't mean anything. That's for sure. And I'm sure he guides you, and you were doing things you thought you couldn't do, right?
Right. And the title of the book, Hellven, there's a subtitle that goes with it called The Struggles of Being a Worldly Christian. And people will see that Hellven and wonder what that is and wonder what this book's about. So I'll kind of explain that a little bit. But basically, the state of Christianity in our world right now is the worst it's ever been. Just look around and the things that we see every day in the news, and it's just Christians today are labeled hypocrites and holy rollers, and no one's got anything good to say about religion and church. And it starts with us Christians, and basically what I feel like the Lord told me about the title of this book and what it's about is the fact that Christians today, we live like there's no consequences. So, we're going to church on Sunday and doing our Jesus stuff. And then when we walk out those doors, we're not living it anymore like we're supposed to. And, you hear growing up that you get saved and you've kind of punched your ticket to heaven, or, some people call it fire insurance, and I think once Christians do that and they're saved and they think, no matter what they do, they can live their life how they want to and just ask for forgiveness and, start over the next day and do the same sins and find themselves in the loop like that. And that's definitely not the way we're supposed to live. And it's definitely not the way that, the Lord wants us to act. So it's, the Hellven is a twist on the word hell and heaven. And it's just basically metaphorical speaking for that mindset that us Christians have gotten into these days, where they can live like they're going to go to heaven, but they're going to also turn around when they leave the church doors or around certain people and act like they're, sinful people that are going to end up in hell, or, just kind of living both sides or both sides of the fence type of a deal. So,
right.
And because of all of that is, we're feeding the world, which, Satan's in control of the world, and he's loving that we're, acting like that as Christians these days. So, when we're doing that, we're not only making things even worse, but we're, making it to where the Christianity or the Christian name is, like I said earlier, we're just becoming hypocrites. So the unsaved look at us and say, there's no difference between you and us. They don't see us when we go to church. The unsaved don't interact with us when we've got our Christian face on, so to speak. So they look at it and say, well, you're claiming to be a Christian, but you're not any different than me. So what, if you're supposed to be setting yourself apart, how are you doing that?
Yeah. They look for excuses. They watch you, don't they?
Right. And we're definitely supposed to be, seen differently in the world. And these days we're just not. And because of that, we've got all kinds of problems and struggles that we deal with. And the book kind of goes into those struggles and different topics. And then I try to help, the reader understand that if you are struggling with these things and finding yourself living like I'm talking about with this Hellven mindset, then, the first thing you got to do is try to get your Christian walk or your relationship with God back on the right path. And then there's ways that you can easily deal with these struggles and overcome them. And so each chapter or topic in the book is talking about these different struggles we face daily. And then I give scriptures at the end of each chapter to kind of help the reader see what the Lord and the Word says about those struggles and how you overcome them. So,
yeah, that's one thing that's really great, David, that you do that. They immediately have a reference they can go to, and that way, if they want to dig more, they can go in the Bible, right? That's great.
Right. It really helped my walk too, just writing the book, because I had to. I would literally get up in the morning and pray and say, God, what do you want me to say today?
Mm.
He would give me one of these topics, and I would have to go and just really deep dive and study the word and pick out those verses and scriptures that he wanted me to put in. So, I mean, it really was eye opening for me, and I feel like once somebody reads the book through, they can hang on to that book and go back to it, because it's, just because we're Christians, and even if we're walking in the path that we're supposed to be walking, doesn't mean that these struggles and things are going to disappear and we're never going to face them again. It's just knowing that we've got the Lord and everything we need there to get through those struggles a lot easier than if you were unsaved and not on the right path. So, the reader can go back to those topics as they have them pop up in their lives and remind themselves of the things that it says and the scriptures that are there. So, but
Yeah, that's what I liked about the book, David. It was nice. You didn't really have to read through the whole thing. You can just pick out what pertained to you, what you were going through. It's like you just said, it's a quick thing. They can just go right back to it all the time. That's what's great, because it'll be a useful thing, a daily thing, because we face terrible things in our life.
right, yeah, I've personally faced a lot of things that I talk about in depth in the book, and I feel like those are things that the Lord wanted me to share as well, just the things that I've personally faced or my family's faced, and how we've kind of made it through those things. And a lot of the things and the topics in the book that I talk about are uncomfortable things that a lot of people don't like to talk about these days, but it's happening around us constantly, and things are getting worse and worse. So there's got to be a calling on the Christianity and religion to kind of go back to what we're supposed to be doing and living how we're supposed to be living, and have a visible difference between us and the unsaved. And then also getting back to, doing what we're supposed to be doing, which is witnessing and winning people to the Lord instead of acting just like everyone else and
blending in. Yeah.
right. So
yeah. Wow. Do you mind sharing a little bit of what you went through and how you got out of it? Or
sure. The biggest thing in my personal life that I've had to go through, and actually hits on several of these topics, is my wife and I lost a son to suicide in 2016. And, he had been battling some depression and addiction problems, and for several years, and, a lot of different things that we tried to help him through and went through with him. And eventually it just, things got too much, and, he left us. But with that came, grief and depression. We've got two other daughters that were both younger than him, and, we've had to deal with, the one that was the closest to him in age was really close to him personally, and she's had a lot of problems since then, and she kind of got off and used drugs and alcohol to cope with things. And then so we started kind of dealing with some of the exact same problems with her that we had with him, and that puts fear in you as a parent, as, okay, so we've lost a son and we've seen what kind of led down that path, and now we've got our middle child is basically doing these same steps. And the youngest was quite a bit younger than my son, about 10 years, and so she didn't fully know what was going on. But at one point, this has all happened in the last 5 or 6 years, we went from 3 kids, and you feel like you've raised them right. And I was a preacher's son, so we've had our kids in church, and they all got saved at a young age. And my son, actually, right before he passed, a couple of years before that, he actually surrendered to ministry and wanted to be a youth pastor. And we look back on that now, and I think Satan really attacks people when he knows you're going to go to work for the Lord. So
Absolutely.
that's timing wise is kind of when my son started experiencing some problems with depression and just different things going on in his life that led him kind of down that wrong path. And like I said, you just beat yourself up as a parent thinking, what did I do wrong? And, we feel like we have always tried to be pretty good parents to our kids. And like I said, have them in church and everything else, but that doesn't give you immunity to the struggles and the things of this world. And
No.
like I said, we've gone through all of it. And like I said, we're still dealing with things with our daughters daily, 6 years after. And my oldest daughter actually just spent a little over a month in rehab for probably the third time since my son's passed. And for the most part, the girls are doing really good now versus the past. It's like it gets a little bit better as time goes on, but it's always something that it's never going to go away. You hear people say time will heal, and until you've actually been in that situation where you've lost a child or something, you really just don't know.
Yeah.
But even loved ones don't know how to. Our close immediate family doesn't know exactly how to act or what to say and what not to say. And there's a lot of grace given in those situations where you've got to understand that people don't understand. You don't want them to have to understand, for one. You don't want us to be in this situation. But what the good thing is what the Lord's done in us and through our family, through all this. There's, it's not the Lord causing things to happen. And, a lot of unsaved people will look at situations and say, well, you're saying your family's been in church and you're a Christian, so why would God let stuff like that happen to you? And it's, those are hard questions to answer, and, things that we've asked the Lord, crying out to him, why would you do this? Why would you take our son? Why would you have our daughters struggling? And, all these different things. What did we do wrong? And there's no problem with being mad at God too. We went through, you hear the stages of grief and things, and I kind of talk about, there's a chapter in the book about grief, and I talk about a lot of this with our family. But, there's anger and sadness and depression and all these different things that come with that. And but there's nothing that says that you can't be angry at the Lord. And we've yelled out, cried out at God, asking why, and that doesn't mean that he's not sitting there loving you any less or helping you through those situations. And what we've come to realize is if we didn't have the Lord and the faith and the hope that we've got in him, we would not survive any of this stuff. We went through a period right after we lost our son where I didn't know if I was going to have my wife. She was just devastated to the point where she didn't want to be here. I had to be the glue to hold the family together, and I didn't really have time to grieve myself the way I should for the first year or so, just trying to hold everything together. And you look at things now and what the Lord has done to bring us to this point is just amazing. And the Lord can always take a situation that's really bad, and he'll always be faithful to bring good and to bring light to that situation if you're willing to just have that faith and hope and trust in him that he's going to do that, which is what we had to do. And it's not an easy point to get to, but when you do, it's just a beautiful thing. So we there's a quick story I'll tell too. We had recently moved to the Dallas, Texas area. I switched jobs, and right before my son passed, and we were looking for a church family, and we visited 2 or 3 different ones, and really just hadn't found one that we were comfortable with yet, and had been kind of praying about where God wanted us to end up. And my son actually died a couple miles from our house. He went on a walk and didn't come home, and we didn't know what had happened or anything until we got a knock on the door from the police. And long story short, there was a lady that found our son and sat there with him until the cops came and the coroner took him. And we found out about it from the cops that a lady had called it in, and we wanted to meet the lady and just thank her for, basically taking care of the situation and being there with our son. And turns out she was a pastor's wife.
Wow.
Of the church that we ended up joining and we're still members at. And my wife actually works for that church now. And
wow.
There's a big, long story to that. It's just that church poured into us like we were members and family, and really helped us through going through that just devastation period. And my wife is actually, it's a big church, and they've got what they call the care department. And my wife is the care coordinator for the church now. And she deals with, an array of things, but one of the things she does is if there's any time anyone has a suicide in their family or in our church, she actually goes and counsels with them. And she deals with a lot of things like funerals and different things, but the Lord's taken our situation and is using her to help others in that same situation or same grief. And it's just been a beautiful thing watching her story. And then the area of Dallas that we live in also has a group called the Lost Team, and it's for families of suicide, or anyone, family, friends that have lost somebody to suicide. They reach out. This group goes and reaches out to the survivors' families, and my wife actually volunteers for that. So, you would never think that somebody that's gone through what we've gone through would want to be around that again. But it's just a beautiful thing to watch her. I've witnessed her go and sit with these families and let them cry on her shoulder and explain to them that you're not alone. And she gives them hope in Christ through our story. And, it's just, all of that's just Jesus. There's no other way to describe that. And then, using me to write our story in this book. And I'm not as comfortable with things talking about it as my wife is. So I think, she's kind of the one that the Lord's using vocally to do this. And mine's more, just in the background with the book and different things. But it's just been really neat to watch all of that. My wife has really helped a lot of people. And, suicide's not something that people like to talk about these days, but it's unreal just right here around us in our county that we live in. This Lost Team that she's involved with gets phone call after phone call after phone call.
Wow.
And you don't understand how often it happens until you're involved with a group like that, to where you get those phone calls. There's several volunteers and they have to go on shifts because it's so heavy. You're dealing with things right, sometimes they're on scene, but my wife will get called to a scene where they're taking a body out of the house and the family's sitting there grieving, and she's just, lending a shoulder to cry on. And because unfortunately the police and people like that don't have any clue what to tell these people. And you really don't unless you've gone through it. But
do you find it, David, sometimes it's just best not to say anything at all, just to be there? You find in those cases?
We've had to tell, close family, you don't have to say anything. It's just knowing you're there with us and knowing you're supporting us, giving us a shoulder to cry on, just different things like that.
Right.
It's better sometimes than saying something wrong. There's people that say stuff, even close friends and family, right after something like that. And you have to kind of take a step back and realize they just don't know. And like I said earlier, you don't want somebody that you love to know that feeling. And so you have to have a lot of grace. But there was people telling us, just give it a week or two and you'll be all right. I'm like, is this not something we're sitting here? It was in 2016 and we're still dealing with it daily.
It's for the rest of your life, David, right? It's you just have to learn how to cope with it, right?
Yep. And there's good days and bad days still. My wife went home from work one day this week. She just couldn't quit crying, and she, luckily she works with people that do understand that, and there's grace and compassion there, and there's no questions asked. But the place I'm in construction, and man's world, men don't cry type of mindset, and literally the company I was working for when it happened expected me to be back to work a few days later, and I think I missed a week. But it was just that whole first year is a blur. I mean, you're in such a state of shock and grief, and just trying to, it's survival mode really. Like I said, I was trying to be the rock for my wife and my girls, and you don't have time to even think. But my wife couldn't work; she was just a wreck. So I had to go back to work and provide, and you just kind of learn to turn it off. And I think men, kind of are geared towards that more, but
we keep it inside more, and it's hard, right?
And I did. I kept a lot of things inside, and I've still got things that I need to deal with all of it that I probably haven't correctly dealt with. But like I said, it's just something that it's going to stick, and it's going to hurt, and you're going to feel it for the rest of your life. It's not something that you get over. And with all the COVID and everything over the last couple of years, I ended up losing my father as well to COVID. I mean, we were pretty close, and he was only 67. And when I looked at him, I told my wife, I said, I still considered, my dad young. I thought we'd have many more years with him. And he got the COVID early on in 2020, and before they really knew what to do with it and how to treat it. And we ended up losing him, and as painful as it is to lose a parent, even before their time should be up, it's a drop in the bucket compared to losing a child. And then I think you step it up a notch when it's suicide too, because it's just, me and my wife have had conversations about, I think we could have handled it better if it was like a car wreck or, something that an accident. But with the suicide, you're questioning why, and, why didn't they want to be here with us, and why would they do that, and what did I do wrong? And there's all kinds of things that you go through in your head, and but it's just crazy how it affects you and how it can affect your family. And but ultimately, if you let those things just dwell in you, and that's all you concentrate on is the what ifs and the whys, and you don't turn that focus at some point to the Lord, there's just no way I think people can get through it. There's some statistics and things I use in the book. I don't have them off the top of my head, but just like marriages, for example, of these days, divorce rates higher than it's ever been just for a normal marriage. But then you tack on loss of a child in a marriage, and then tack on a suicide of a child in a marriage. And I think the divorce rate's like in the 90%.
Mm.
And so the fact that, I thank God every day that my wife and I have been able to pull through this together, and it's pulled us together stronger. And like I said, we couldn't be where we are right now if it wasn't through the Lord. So
Absolutely. Listen, I can't imagine what you all have gone through and what you go through each day. Uh, I just couldn't comprehend that.
yeah,
You never expect to lose a child, bury your child. You expect to go before them, but that's just has to be so painful. And then you're close to your father, and that happens too. But I'm sure you see what God has done. He's turned this into good because look what you guys are doing. You're reaching out to people. You're touching people's lives probably when you don't even realize that you're doing it. It's just that's just so amazing, and you guys are brave people just to do this because that has to be such a painful experience that you have to deal with daily. And I'm sure when you help people, it probably opens up the womb sometimes, doesn't it?
yeah. It's like I said, my wife's, I don't really go there like she does, but
Mm-hmm.
what the Lord's using her for has just been beautiful to watch. 'Cause like I said, she's going out on these calls with this team she works with and volunteers, and but I know the Lord's using those situations to let her share her story, and it's really made an impact on other people's lives and these families' lives. And uh, one of the best things we've had since losing our son was we've got a few families that we've met through that situation where they've lost a child by
Mm-hmm.
suicide. And we joke around and call it our sad group because
Mm-hmm.
it's sad that you have to have a group of friends
Mm-hmm.
in a situation like that you want to hang out with and be around because of the fact that you've got that in common. So
Mm-hmm.
we laugh and call it our sad friend group. But the Lord's really blessed us with a couple of different families in particular that we get together and have a meal, or just go to each other's house and spend some time together at least 2 or 3 times a year. And
Mm-hmm.
we were brought together through the loss of our children.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's no other people that know that exact feeling, the exact thoughts, the just every emotion. And I think the Lord's used those couples and used us for those couples to have that time and the friendship that we've made to where we can talk about the things that no one else really knows how
Mm-hmm.
to talk to us about but them. But
Y'all can relate to each other, right?
right, right.
Right.
But,
Wow, that's again, that's the great thing that came out of that. You're not only helping other people, but people are helping you.
right. But it's been a long road for us, but I can say that today we're in a pretty good place. A lot of people will say, "Well, what's the one thing that has really helped you the most?" And it's basically hope. Hope is
Mm,
you've got hope that you're gonna hope and trust and faith in the Lord that you're gonna see your kid again.
amen.
Like I said, I know in Christianity, there's a lot of different beliefs on. When I grew up thinking, you didn't hear very often of someone that died by suicide, and you had some really religious people that said, that's the unforgivable sin to take your life. But I don't believe that. I think
No,
you know
I don't
once
either.
once you're saved, I think if it's a real deal, then I don't think there's anything that can pull you apart from that.
Yeah.
And we do have hope that we're going to see our son in heaven. We know without a doubt that he was saved. And like I said, at one point he actually surrendered his life to ministry and wanted to be a youth minister. And I just feel like once he did that, I just feel like the enemy really attacked him and
Hmm.
just won that battle, that spiritual battle. But which, that stuff is very, very real, spiritual warfare, and everything that we see around us on a daily basis is just proof of that. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's times when that stuff wins and prevails, and that's just the way it is until the Lord returns and stomps on Satan's head and puts an end to it for good. That's just the things that we're going to deal with in this world. And like I said, a lot of what I talk about in the book is all of these different struggles and things that
Mm-hmm.
we're dealing with. A big part of what I've been talking to you here about surrounding the suicide, and
Mm-hmm.
there's all kinds of things that go with that. And I talk about those in the book some too, the depression and addiction. And, like I said, we've had our share
Mm-hmm.
of dealing with addiction with the kids. And, I praise God that myself and my wife haven't had any struggles with drugs or alcohol, but or addictions. And
Mm-hmm.
but we've definitely had to learn and deal with it with our children. And like I said, most people will look at your family, and when they see ours, they don't have a clue that, they're shocked when they hear we've lost a son. And,
Mm-hmm.
they wouldn't look at our girls and think that there's anything wrong with them, or that they've got struggles with different things or addictions. And, then you tell someone, well, one of my daughters is in rehab right now, and they're just shocked. But there's a lot of families that are like that I think all of us need to kind of step back and say, you just don't know what people are going through or dealing with. And
Exactly.
grace is what what I preach is always be, mindful that you don't know the things going on with other people around you. And
do you find yourself, David, being real sensitive to that too, with the other people when you see them? You find it that you feel that you can tell someone's going through something, and you
I
just
do.
you just know.
I really think that the Lord blessed me and my wife with some discernment in those situations since we
Mm-hmm.
lost our son. You pick up on things, you pick up on actions or reactions. And I mean, my wife can really, she's got a gift with it. And, but she'll be one of those people that she'll ask you how you're doing. And if
Mm-hmm.
you lie and make it sound like you're doing fine and you're really not, she'll ask you, how are you really doing? And I've seen her do it, and people just break down crying because it's like, how'd you know something was wrong? And
Mm-hmm.
I really believe once you go through something like this, the Lord gives you that discernment to help others with it. And that all comes with just being obedient with that. I mean, if He gives you those feelings and things, and that, that tug on your heart to ask questions, or to reach out to somebody that you feel like struggling and you don't do it, then
So you're kind of you're tuned into them, aren't you?
I think that's what it is. You're tuned into those things, but
Mm-hmm.
it takes that step of obedience to follow through and actually say things or do things, or dig in when you sense that people aren't telling you everything. And it's not being nosy. It's just, if you
Oh
love,
no, yeah, it's showing your love. You're being concerned, right? Because they're probably feeling like nobody knows what I'm going through,
right,
and I feel so alone in this.
that we've learned all kinds of things about obedience through this. And, something else cool that I talk about there's a chapter in the book on obedience, and I'll share another story kind of on the broader side. I've got 3 siblings, and two of them are sisters that are both older than me, and I've got a younger brother. And my oldest sister, she we all the 3 younger kids, myself included, had children before her, and she had been trying for years. And I think she was 40 years old and still had not had a child yet, and went through all kinds of procedures and, tried everything. And I was sitting beside her at church one Sunday, and it was Mother's Day. And I'm sure everybody's been to church on Mother's Day. The preacher always does
Mhm.
something or says something about the mothers. And I've had services, even when growing up as a preacher's son, my dad used to, honor the mothers by telling them to stand up and give them a
Mhm.
rose or, something. Well, that Sunday was no different. We were not at my father's church, but my sister was there with my family, and the preacher starts saying something about Mother's Day, and I look over, and my sister's just got tears coming down her face, and it just broke my heart. And right there, I said a prayer for her.
Mhm.
I said, Lord, please bless her with the child. And it's like the whole place went silent, and I heard the voice of the Lord say, before next Mother's Day, she will have a child.
Mm.
Just telling you right now, it gives me chills because it was so real. It was like Jesus whispered that in my ear. And I went home from that service. I didn't say a word to my sister because it just kind of freaked me out. And, a lot of people struggle with that. Do you hear the Lord? Is it a
Mhm.
real voice, or is it a, tug on your heart? I'm just telling you, it can be a voice like you're hearing between me and you right now.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
real. And if you the more you tune into the Lord, the more you're going to hear that. But it can be feelings and things too. But that day for me, it was the most real I've heard his voice. And anyways, I go home and I tell my wife, I told her the whole story about what I just said. And I said, I don't know that I should tell her, but because if I'm wrong on that, it'll just break her heart and devastate her even more. And my wife said, well, if you don't tell her, you're not being obedient. And, that could end up,
Mhm.
you're going to have to, face the consequences for not being obedient. So I waited and waited until late that night, and I called my sister on the phone, and I said, I told her what happened, and I said, the Lord says you're going to have a child before next Mother's Day. And of course, my sister's a sweetheart, and she thanked me for telling her the story, and she cried a little bit on the phone, and she said, that would be awesome if that happens, but I could also sense in her voice, like, yeah, it's probably not going to happen. But
Mhm.
anyways, about that time, her and her husband had actually been trying all kinds of different things to get pregnant, and nothing worked. And the doctors have basically said, I just don't think it's in y'all's cards. And it started talking about adoption options and different things. And she actually had an appointment set for, I don't know, it wasn't too long after that I told her this. She went to a doctor's appointment, and all they were going to do was discuss, like, he was going to give them some pamphlets on adoption and stuff. And anytime you go to, I guess the ladies go to those doctors, they start by giving you a pregnancy test. So
Mhm.
she randomly had to take a pregnancy test, but it wasn't, for any other reason other than protocol. And the doctor calls her back to the office and is in shock and says, you're pregnant.
Wow.
And literally about a month before the next Mother's Day, she had her son. And
Wow.
I think he's about 8 now. But
Wow.
and she immediately came home. I think her husband was at work, and I ended up being her first phone call.
I
She
bet.
called me so excited to tell me the news that she was pregnant. And like I said, just telling the story gives me chills today. It's just been
Mm.
one of those times where you feel like you've got to tell somebody something that the Lord prompted you to do it. And it's just, those little acts of obedience, and just being able to experience the feelings of pure joy and excitement,
Mhm.
things like that,
Mhm.
makes it worth it. Even when you're doubting what you're hearing, or you're doubting, you know, I could have, I could have just sat and not said a word. I could have
Right.
doubted that I really heard what I heard, and not said anything. And who's to know that she would even have a child? There's just,
Yeah.
I
Well,
think,
it showed her, increased her faith. That's for sure.
right,
If you
sure,
didn't say anything, that probably wouldn't occur, right?
yeah, and it sure did mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
Absolutely.
gives you a confidence, and you know, next time you hear things or you feel things, you're more confident and about being bold. And And that's, just simple things like that God wants us to do that we just don't do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm talking about with, I think all of us have this Hellven mindset where even if you do feel those things, you don't say it because you're afraid of what the world's going to think or say about you, or,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
call you a holy roller, or, just different
Yeah.
things.
So we need to stand up and have the attitude. We don't care what the world thinks, right?
Right.
Absolutely.
And I have seen it in my own life. It's the things you worry about, like worrying about your reputation or someone making fun of you, or all those bad things. When you actually are obedient and you do what you feel that you are supposed to be doing, or act how you're supposed to act, and these things, and you're obedient to the Lord, I think the opposite happens and great things come from it. Just like I just talked about with my sister. I mean, the feelings of watching the excitement and the joy and all of that, I wouldn't care what anyone else thought at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just all of that's there for us, and so much more if we're just able to, like I say, be obedient and do these things and act the way we're supposed to act and live how we're supposed to live. And uh, you know, everything I talk about in the book is just talking about getting back on track as Christians these days. And
Mm-hmm.
and I'll be the first to say I'm a hypocrite at most of this stuff. And that's another thing I struggled with writing the book was what qualifies me to tell people how to act or how to be obedient or how to do this or do that. And like I said, I'd sit down and literally just sit at my computer and stare at the screen and just say, okay, you told me to write about obedience this morning. I don't know what to tell anybody. And
Mm-hmm.
the Holy Spirit, just because I was obedient enough to sit down, starts prompting you and having stories and different things that just pop up. And I was lucky enough to have some great stories and things that actually happened in my life. But I do think, like, even I use this experience with my sister in the obedience chapter, but God used that situation because he knew he wanted me to do this book. And that, the whole book thing was another step of obedience for me. And that, I fought it for a long time. It literally
Mm-hmm.
took me a matter of years before I took this serious and started writing in this book.
Mm-hmm.
But, it's been one of the greatest accomplishments was finishing that book. And, just, I said, Lord, I'm done with it. And if it never goes outside of this house, family, friend circle, then so be it. I know I did what you asked me to do, and that feels great.
Mm-hmm.
But if it goes out and it helps other people, then,
Mm-hmm.
even better. But
Because I think sometimes when we feel that God has us doing something, we think a different way how we think the outcome should be, but God has other plans, and we expect, like, oh, I wanted to do this, to make it so big, and it doesn't have to be. It could just be, you could, if you could just reach one person. I think that itself is a great accomplishment.
yep.
That's yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about some of the topics you have here. Like, one, you have worry. And I know a lot of people are doing that right now. Like you just mentioned, what's going on in our world.
Yep.
What did you find about worry in your life?
Well, it's you can literally plug in all these different topics, but we'll just start with the worry. If you just give those things to the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
that's 90% of taking care of it. And there's so much stuff in the Bible about the Lord basically telling you don't worry about things. And uh, it was not hard to find the scriptures to go with that worry
Mm-hmm.
topic, because there's so many places where he's just telling you flat out, cast your cares on me, I'll take care of everything. And I mean, that one's so simple, but
Mm-hmm.
yet we don't do it.
Yeah.
And I'm, like I said, I'm the first to admit that I don't. I'll sit up at night in bed and just worry about different things. In the construction world, I'm a project manager, and I'll literally lose sleep at night worrying about is this going to show up on my job site when it's supposed to, or is this sub going to do what they're supposed to, or how's this problem going to get fixed? And it's just worry, worry, worry. And simply all we have to do is just say, I'm not going to worry about that at all. I'm just going to let the Lord have it. He's promised me, he's going to take care of it if I have the faith and the trust in him to do it. And that should be as simple as it is, but
we make it harder than what it has to be, don't we? And it's Satan, I think, that's whispering in our ear about that, isn't it? And especially if he knows that's your weakness, he'll bring up every little thought, right?
If you look at the cover of the book, it's a silhouette of a man, and he's got, like the old cartoons we saw, you got Satan in one ear and the angel on the other shoulder telling you different things. And
right.
But that, that worry is the one I think the enemy is really in your ear, because it's, like I said, it's so simple to just not worry and give it to the Lord. But you constantly, the thoughts that are in your head are coming from the enemy, not.
Yeah. And do you suggest that when someone does do that, and the enemy will put thoughts back in their head, do you suggest that you just remind yourself, no, the Lord has promised me He's going to take care of that, and just tell Satan to go take a hike?
Yeah, I mean, and that's what the enemy's telling you in the other ear is, okay, you're going to tell me that the Lord's going to make this sub go do what you need him to do tomorrow at this job site. You might believe that, but what if your sub's not saved and he's not, in tune with the Lord? And I mean, enemies just filling your thoughts, your head full of negative thoughts. So, but it's hard unless you're in tune with God and you're on the right path with your walk. And that's where it all starts. You get those things right in your life, and then the things like the worrying and all that's just less and less and less. You fill those voids with Jesus and reading his word and doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, and those things get smaller and smaller and smaller. They'll never go away. As long as you're in this world, you're going to have worry, and you're going to have all the struggles that we're faced with every day. But
that's why we need his word to go back on it to get that healing again, right? Because we're not perfect, because this fallen world that we live in.
Yep.
And also, David, does that go with the other topic you talk about with stress? That's more or less tied in together as well.
Yep. So, I mean, all of these it's crazy when you start looking at all the different struggles, how they all tie together. It's like I said earlier, the loss of our son, literally you could tie to all of these different struggles in my book. With that came the grief, obviously, and the depression and the worry and the anger and the stress and that's how Satan uses those things. You're okay with worry. You've learned to give that to the Lord, and I see you're not worrying, but what about this over here? This guy's making you angry. So, then he starts attacking and whispering in your ear about other things and other problems, but they can all be related. And, Satan's at work in this world every day. And these are the things that he uses against us. And because he knows we let it all happen when it's so easy to not. But,
what about you have here also in one of your topics is life balance. Can you explain how that works, or what was that about?
Yeah, that one for me was a big one, because it's about what all you've got to juggle in your life. And like I said, over the last few years, I've had a lot more than most. I'm an executive type role in my career. So I've got all of that comes, managing people and managing projects and doing all these things. And this type of work that I'm in follows you home. I don't just get to leave at 5 o'clock and not worry about things until the next day. I'll get calls and texts and emails I've got to answer after hours. And then you start doing that, and then you've got,
consumes you, right?
Yeah, your family's like, can you put your phone down and be present? And then it's like, if you make time for all that stuff, why can't you make time for, the Lord every morning? I struggle with, I should be doing more as far as getting up and having quiet time and prayer time in the morning to start my day. Sometimes I'll get on a streak where I will do that, to start my day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing I know, I'm sleeping a little bit later because I don't want to get up because I had a long day the day before, and then you're out of that routine. And when my kids were younger, they would say stuff to me because I worked so much about, hey, go do this or that with me. And if I said no, then Daddy, you're no fun anymore. And just
Mm-hmm.
it's learning how a healthy balance
Mm-hmm.
to deal with all of those things, and God wants us to prioritize Him as our number one priority. And I think if we all take a step back and look, our life balance is more about things other than God, and
Worldly stuff, right?
and I'm guilty of it myself
Mm-hmm.
all the time. But all these things that you sit and worry and stress, and your finances and jobs and all that, you let have that priority, and then things just get out of hand even further. So that life balance, if we all learn to put the Lord at the top of that priority list and spend that time with Him, and then that puts you in the right mindset moving into those other things in your life, to where you're balanced, and the balancing mechanism is your relationship with the Lord. And now you don't have all these other things that go with problems and stress and all the different things that, when you're out of balance, you have to deal with even more. So like I say, that one's one I've struggled with constantly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that ties into the other topic too, because that would pertain, if you don't have a balanced life, with your relationships, right?
Right.
You gotta that kind of ties in together, right? As
Right.
far as relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I said, giving the wrong priorities can affect your relationships at home with your wife and your kids. And,
Mm-hmm.
then if you've got a real demanding job and they see you're spending too much time at home, or, your family's too important to you, then you got problems at work. And
Yeah. Yeah.
all of that can go either way. But in the relationship chapter, I talk about, if you put that relationship with the Lord at the top, then all of your other relationships that funnel down from there are going to be what He intends, and they're going to be great relationships because they're built on that solid foundation. And it's when you start getting yourself further from Him and further off the path with Him, that those other relationships in your life will do the same thing. It's going to mirror whatever you're putting into your relationship with the Lord is going to be mirrored to your other relationships.
Wow, David, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. Your book, like I said, it's a gift from God for sure, because it's a daily bread type of thing that you can help people and everything. Can you tell everyone where they can get this wonderful book?
Yeah, any of the online store platforms, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, any online bookstore will have it, and you can search the title Hellven or my name, David Stanfield, as the author, and you should be able to find it easily.
Awesome. Awesome. I thank you, my friend, and God bless you. And I will continue to pray for you and your family, and the healing and the ministry that you're doing for Him and helping others. Thank you so much for joining us today, my friend.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
Absolutely. You take care.
All right.